The internet has everything. I don't know about everything, but I can definitely say that there is something on the internet that is better to never say. Half a year ago, I still did not understand this, and I considered exactly the opposite statement to be true. Like, in life, we have to try everything, and in general, everything that doesn't kill us makes us stronger. In a word, I was a fool. I didn't know that once you tried it, you will never be able to forget it. I was never an indifferent pervert or a psycho. On the contrary, I was very sentimental towards everyone, although I understood that this could turn out to be the wrong side for me, and from this consideration, a stupid idea was born. It consisted in hardening oneself by viewing dismemberment, which is now in abundance on the internet. Anyone who even occasionally accesses the internet has probably already seen videos of beheadings of terrorist prisoners or people taking their own lives in various ways. I thought that if I watched this on a regular basis, I would become easier to relate to misfortunes in real life. Yes, no matter how it is, it's amazing how completely opposite people can do the same things. Trying to get started, I didn't even know where to look. Not daring to Google, I decided to search on Telegram. Having not come up with anything better than typing murder in the Telegram search, I looked through the various names of channels, a la League of Tin 21+, or Katana 21+. Looking through the list of results and reading these not promising titles, I felt that I was doing something wrong. Simply put, I got tired of clicking on the very first results in the list and decided to choose the lesser evil, looking for the most friendly option. And suddenly, I noticed that there was some channel in the list with a dot in the name. This is in the nickname of some Telegram users. Sometimes, when a user wants to seem unusual, he can put an end to his nickname, but this is the first time I've seen a channel with that name. The photo of the channel showed some kind of red symbol on a white background. The symbol on the screen was too small to see in detail, so I clicked on the channel. Having already prepared to see dismemberment, I squinted and I didn't see anything terrible. As it turned out later, the channel was a couple of days old, and only 20 people were subscribed to it. The channel feed looked frankly strange. It looked as if a person who could not write in Russian was trying to compose words from the letters of the Russian alphabet in a language he alone understood. At the very least, the structure of the text of the messages hinted that the post seemed to be written meaningfully. Taken together, the text resembled something like a blog. If you try to read what was written there, you get extremely disgusting sounds that are completely gibberish, like SCH, CHSK, and things like that. I don't remember exactly, but there was something similar. Between messages, the same, extremely strange link was often repeated. It looked like a regular link to a Telegram channel. Only after the usual Telegram link, there was a stupid set of ones and zeros. Not yet daring to click on the link, I began to study the channel further. There was a phrase in the channel description that I would see again and again later, which is why I remembered it. Stroud Church is what it roughly translates to. That's what the description read. Immediately, I remembered the photo of the channel. When I look at her, I don't understand anything. I look again, and I still don't understand anything. I even increased the zoom to maximum, but still did not understand anything. Naturally, as long as I can remember, I have never had any problems describing something, but here it is. Even if I try very hard, I won't be able to find the right words to describe it. The only thing I can say is some very detailed red symbol on a white background, and that is it. Having stopped racking my brains with photography, I realized that there was nothing more to do on this channel. I did not dare subscribe, so I simply left myself a link for a friend in my favorites, after which I followed one of the links between posts. A window appeared on the screen. This is a private channel. In order to go to it, you must first subscribe. The window showed the number of subscribers, about 900, a photo of the channel and its name, or rather the absence of both. The photo was just black, and the channel name was blank. Also, a description appeared in the window, where something was written in a language unknown to me, and then at the name of some user. By this moment, all of my fear had disappeared, and I had already stopped thinking about dismemberment. I was overcome by genuine interest, so without thinking too much, I clicked on the subscribe button. Having switched to the mysterious Telegram channel, I saw the latest post, a grouping of photographs where any Russian outback can be easily guessed. A coughed-up bench in some godforsaken park, a brick column in an abandoned unfinished building, where all of the corners are pissed off and the entire floor is covered in cigarette butts and syringes. Taking a closer look, I realized that they were not photographing city landmarks, but that same indescribable symbol painted on them. There were only about 6 photographs, and this symbol was drawn painfully, evenly, everywhere. It's as if they didn't draw it, but, who the hell knows, printed it or something. I also paid attention to the description of the channel in more detail. At the beginning of the description, there was again text in a language unknown to me, and then, at username. Although I'm not a philologist, in my humble opinion, the language seemed extremely alien, even though it was written in Latin. But even the Latin alphabet is somehow strange, with a bunch of letters I have never seen before. After at username, the text continued in an unknown language. It lasted a total of 3 lines, and then, apparently, the text was duplicated in Russian. Text from memory. Stroud Church. For all questions at username. Happy upcoming Black Festival. Scrolling up the feed, I saw a post with a title picture of medieval torture and text underneath it. The drawing depicted a naked man who was impaled. Text from memory. Stroud Church. Today we finally got to the most popular ritual in our circles, which we simply call call. This is an incredibly simple ritual to implement. For it, you will need a thick log, 2 meters, preferably young so that it is stronger, and a good plow. Just sharpen the log and put the rear end on the tip in a horizontal position and place the stake vertically. Do not forget to tie it before impaling it, otherwise it will be problematic to impale. Below, apparently, the text is duplicated in that same unknown language. It gets more interesting. Comments are open on the channel. I went into the discussion under the post and saw the following text from memory. Message in unknown language from user 1. No, it is not worth it. The archvac must suffer. Responding to a message from user 1. There was a method. Lubricate the tip with oil and lower the archvac's anus onto a stake. The ritual will last several days, but life will be very strong, and the flesh of the archvac will be loved. Something in an unknown language. Message in unknown language from user 1. User 2 replies in an unknown language to the first message of user 1. While still reading, I became hooked on wild betrayal. Fear, bewilderment, and curiosity were mixed in me. Emotions combined into a bizarre cocktail that bubbled up in me excitedly. I froze, looked at a strange language I have never seen before, and thought about what to do next, while at the same time clicking on, as it turned out, hidden profiles of the channel subscribers. Although even in the Russian speech of the local inhabitants, the handwriting of that same unknown language could be traced, the meaning of some words, taking into account the context, could be guessed, but the proposed translation was so terrible that I did not even want to think about it. Although this translation was not needed, everything already looked extremely frightening. For a while, I wanted to just close the channel and forget it like a bad dream, but remembering why I typed murder into the Telegram channel search in the first place, I decided that I will continue studying this channel. Facing such difficulties, people grow as individuals, I thought, deciding that I couldn't just be scared away. Although even then, I doubted it, I continued to scroll up. Scrolling up, I realized that the channel had a whole series of posts similar to the previous one. The post described the most terrible medieval executions and instructions on how to carry them out. Thus, I learned how to make a rack at home, how you can make an Iron Maiden from an ordinary refrigerator, and why quartering is a lot of fun. With each post I read, it became harder for me, and my thoughts became darker. The channel administrator spent a whole marathon on a topic in which he, apparently, was very well versed. The post from this series that really scared me was the post about execution by sawing. Text from memory. In this post, I will tell you about a very effective ritual, which we call half and half or sawing. To make the ritual, you will need the longest rope you can find, 3 thick logs, a 2-handed saw, and a hammer with large nails just in case. We cut the logs in such a way that we get an arch with a height of 1 to 2 meters. We tie the logs together by first cutting the rope into an impressive length of 6 pieces. If necessary, we use a hammer with nails for strong fixation between the logs. The question is often asked, why? Why use 3 logs if you can get by with 2? Answer: if you do everything correctly, then in this way, the structure will be stronger, and there will be no chance that it will bend from the weight of the archback at all. We tie the archback, who is not yet woken up, stretching his arms up so that they can easily be tied to the side logs of the arch. We tie both legs and both arms of the archback to the side logs so that the legs are closer to the crossbar. We hammer the arch into the ground. By this moment, the archback, turned upside down, usually wakes up and does not understand what is happening. This is where a 2-handed saw comes in handy. We cut archback in the genital area from top to bottom. Archback's life will flow into his head, from which in the process, for a long time, he will remain conscious, thereby making life extremely strong, and the archback's flesh very beloved. Having finished reading this marathon, I came across a message and opened it up. Text from memory. In connection with the upcoming Black Festival, the day when distant stars whisper to us and laugh at the mundane, I, by the way, open a marathon of sacrificial rituals. Happy upcoming. While still reading the description of this channel, I noticed congratulations on the upcoming Black Festival. What is it? Is it some kind of new year for these psychos? Then why are they preparing for it in July? Maybe these sectarians also have a different calendar. Finding no answers, I read the post again and noticed something. Usually, even on normal Telegram channels, I don't notice the pinned bar for the first time. But here you have a channel that is a breeding ground for sick bastards. You definitely won't immediately remember the thin stripe at the top. Before clicking on it, I read what was included in the pin. Some kind of video attached to the text in an unknown language. Intrigued, I clicked on the pinned messages anyway. I was very surprised when I saw what it was. It was an advertisement for a bot. Although the text was entirely in an unknown language, the video perfectly showed what was being advertised. The video was a cut of photographs of various kinds of dried herbs and mushrooms accompanied by cheerful club music. Among the mushrooms, by the way, the now popular fly agaric shone. To be honest, the sight of this advertisement greatly relaxed me. Everything pointed to the fact that the market was advertising with illegal substances, which is why the picture emerged that it was just a sect of drug addicts and nothing more. I even laughed when I realized this. It's amazing how easy it is to discard obvious inconsistencies in order for the picture you like to be complete. In a relaxed state, I clicked on pinned messages again, and went crazy. The next pinned message was also an advertisement. This time, the text was first in Russian, and only then duplicated in an unknown language. Text from memory. Church, you can't find time to catch even 3 archbacks, but for this, you haven't even sacrificed 5. There is a simple solution. Call this number, and we will provide you with an archback in 24 hours, no matter where you are. Prices: random, $100, child, $175, virgin, $300, physically healthy guy, $450. Discount on 3 identical in 1, 10%. We are speed, we are rude. Our contacts. Here is a number that consisted of something like 100 digits. And then, the worst thing was the video that was attached to the post. The advertising video was a recording of how this office apparently works. The video shows 4 strong men, dressed all in black, with black balaclavas on their heads. These people sat quietly in a minivan that was shaking violently, apparently in absolute silence. This lasted about 5 seconds, when the minivan suddenly braked very sharply, and all 4, as if on command, rushed towards the door. Opening it, the 4 men disappeared from the camera's field of view. They were gone for about half of a second, after which they returned, holding the 4 of them by the hands and feet of a gray-haired, loudly swearing man. The people in balaclavas tied him up and covered his mouth with duct tape, after which one of them quickly opened the door to the trunk, where the other three threw the guy in there like a bag of shit. In the trunk, there were at least 3 poor fellows like that guy and 1 child, and the video did not end there. After one of the unknown persons closed the trunk door, the situation changes from the body of a minivan to the blackness of an immense cave. The cave looked extremely grotesque. There were a lot of stains on the floor, and strange howls were coming from the darkness of the cave, as if something huge was trying to imitate the sounds of a draft. In the frame stood the same 4 kidnappers, all in the same black clothes, each of whom was holding a torch in his hands, and in front of them was the guy, tied to a vertically standing rack. He was stripped naked and was definitely dead. His limbs were stretched to the point they were almost torn, unable to withstand such stretching. Also, this man's veins were opened along both arms, and his stomach was ripped open, causing his internal organs to spill out in a slimy mass. From all the wounds inflicted on him, blood flowed abundantly down his naked body, and insides turned outward into a bucket standing under the rack. The cameraman, impatiently standing in one place, at some point began to decisively approach the corpse, squeezing through 4 forks. At the moment when the operator moved close, as it turned out, a bucket filled to the brim with blood. He casually puts the camera down, after which it, lying on the floor, records the sight of darkness and sounds, the sounds of some liquid splashing with the loud sounds of someone swallowing. This was the end of the nightmare video. I was simply beside myself with fear, which, oddly enough, prompted me to study this channel in even more detail. If earlier it was a question of perseverance, now it is simply a question of one's own safety. If these scum kidnapped a strong man in the middle of the day in my neighborhood, brutally killed him, and drank his blood, then there is a chance that one day I will see a minivan rapidly approaching me. Closing the Telegram video player window with shaking hands, I did not dare to scroll through the feed for a long time. After sitting in prostration for some time, I changed it for half an hour, after which I somehow came to my senses and began to scroll further. I spent the next 2 hours frantically devouring posts from this channel, looking for something to latch onto. This is something that should help me figure it out and protect myself if something happens. I looked at everything. I also saw those strange messages, written, albeit in Russian letters, but, apparently, in that same unknown language, and I saw a video where people dressed in entirely white robes circled around a giant fire somewhere in the steppe under the rays of the setting sun, and I saw how the channel administrator got into some kind of quarrel in a chat that was conducted entirely in an unknown language, attached screenshots of the dialogue from the comments, and politely explained in Russian that some user was wrong. I even tried to look at some of the profiles of the channel's commentators, but they were absolutely all hidden. Also, I checked both versions of the unknown language in the translator, in the Russian alphabet, and in their alphabet. Google Translator identified an unknown language written in the Russian alphabet as Mongolian, although it did not translate to it in any way, and the text in their alphabet did not give any results at all. And at some point, already in despair, I remembered the very first post I saw. It was that same indescribable symbol drawn in different places in some city. Maybe this means something to these psychos. Maybe this is how they mark the territories they occupy. Deciding to test this assumption, and looking at my clock, which showed 9:30, I threw a sweater over my t-shirt, put on my shoes, and went out into the yard. Armed with my mobile phone, and turning on the flashlight on it, I opened a photo of the symbol in Telegram, and began looking for it throughout the yard. And oh my god, why did I not notice this before? This symbol was painted right on the door leading to the basement of our house, on the swings of the playground, and even on a plastic trash can that stands 20 meters from my entrance. Walking around the yard and finding more and more of these signs, I decided that I would move out of this apartment, and perhaps from the city in general. What finally finished me off was that as I was entering the entrance, I was deep in thought, looked at the place where mothers usually put their strollers, and I fell into a stupor. These sectarians marked not only my yard, but also my entrance. On the floor, under one of the strollers, was the symbol. Already sitting at home, I looked at advertisements for renting different apartment options. Even though this was my apartment and not a rented one, I didn't really worry about what to do with it. I'll sell it cheaply to someone later. Now it is more important to move out. I don't know what prompted me to do this, but for some reason, I just automatically went into Telegram and chose the nameless tab. Scrolling to the post above from the screenshots, I saw a video, the text underneath it in Russian, and its translation into an unknown language. The message was short, text from memory. Long live the Black Festival. Let life flow. In the video, it will be in my nightmares for a very long time. The video showed a cave, similar to the one from the kidnapping. Perhaps it's the same one. In the middle of the blood-stained floor, there was an arch for the sowing ritual, and around a dozen people. Also, next to the arch for the ritual were torches, standing on wooden pedestals that illuminated the cave in a sufficient radius to see the crowd, but not enough to cover the walls of the cave with light, making it seem limitless. Maybe she was. The operator stood closest to the torture instrument, from which an awakened middle-aged man was hanging. He screamed in fear, begging to be released, and the crowd, completely naked, ridiculed the man with loud, almost cruel laughter. This did not last long, after which the crowd stopped laughing and began to emit some kind of singing without a clear melody or rhythm. Simultaneously, some drawn-out chant, exclamations, emanated from the crowd, which each participant uttered in his own way. It sounded extremely ominous. To this strange accompaniment, two people emerged from the crowd, wearing white robes, carrying a two-handed saw, approaching the arch for sawing. Two men in robes raised a two-handed saw over the genitals of the unfortunate man. The man screamed and sobbed heart-rendingly, and the crowd became even more intense and expressive in supporting the punishers with an expressive semblance of a choir. After standing with the saw raised for a few seconds, the punishers began to saw. At the same moment, the cave was filled with the inhuman howl of the victim, and the crowd began, as if supporting the cry of the martyr, to make increasingly loud sounds out of place, creating an infernal atmosphere of what was happening. Small fountains of blood began to gush from the crotch, giving a slightly yellowish appearance to the already slightly visible insides. Having sawed through the long-suffering man's genitals, the executioners began sawing more intensely at his pelvis. There was even more blood, flowing down the torso of the man, who never stopped screaming for a moment. It began to fall into his wide-open mouth, after which he began to choke on it and actively spit. The crowd rejoiced and simply uttered incredibly loud screams that did not even try to sound like some kind of chant. The sound of a saw sliding over bones and deliciously chewing the flesh of an unfortunate person added some special horror to what was happening. This continued for some time, and then the man became silent. Immediately, everyone fell silent, and the executioners, leaving the two-handed saw sticking out somewhere into the victim's abdomen, began nervously checking the man's pulse. After holding his hand on his neck for some time, one of the executioners suddenly stood up with his arms wide apart and shouted joyfully. Immediately, the entire crowd cheered loudly with heart-rending screams and cries, after which they quickly changed the screams to that same chant, while starting to beat out some kind of ragged rhythm with their feet. Beating their feet on the floor, together, they created the illusion that it was as if someone very huge was quickly walking through the horrors of a spacious cave, or maybe these were really steps. Immediately, the cameraman, who had previously kept the sawing process in focus, drew the camera's attention to the crowd, which for some reason was parting, making a wide opening between people. And then, from the darkness in this opening, this began to appear. Hands. There were thousands of hands, pale as ash, intertwined with each other into a gigantic something that had no end. Each of the arms was incredibly long, and it seems to me that they did not have an owner. They were their own masters. I watched with indescribable horror how it, hanging over the floor, slowly moved towards the arch with the corpse of a man, how it grabbed the executioners along the way and dragged them inside itself, how, to the sounds of jubilation made by the crowd, It grabbed and pulled out the entire arch, with the corpse from the ground, and swallowed her. After it ate, this thing began to return along the same trajectory along which it had moved before, so to speak, backward, forward. After the last pale finger disappears into the darkness, the video ends. Now everything is fine with me. I moved to live in another country for permanent residence. Finances are still tight, but I'm sure everything will get better. After what happened, I didn't even think about contacting the police. It was as if it was immediately obvious that it would not help. I unsubscribed from the channel on the same day and deleted the link I left in my favorites immediately after watching the ill-fated video. The only thing I have left are the keys to that apartment and terrible memories. It seems calm here. People are kind and smiling, not like back home. I've had a few spooky, supernatural experiences due to the girl I was married to at the time. Be married to a cute, castiza Mexican. Little titties, fat ass, and mad daddy issues. Didn't know it at the time, but also a pathological liar. The story. Get fever in summer of 2021. Living in one-bedroom apartment with now ex-wife. Been sleeping off illness for going on 12 hours, having crazy fever dreams. Wife decides it's a good time to try and do supernatural shit. Fever of 103, sweating through bedsheets. Hear banging on apartment walls. Think it's fever dream bullshit. Wife comes flying into the bedroom and hides under the sheets. That's weird. Pounding intensifying. Ask wife what the fuck is going on. Keep in mind I'm delirious, sick, and now pissed off cause the bitch woke me up. I fucked up and on. Pounding getting louder, starting to come to my senses. Realize my 1911 is in the living room. Don't really know what is going on, but don't want to deal with it without firepower. Get up to go into living room. Don't go in there, wife says. Okay, now I'm really freaking out. Whole apartment still pounding. Best way I can describe it is like someone beating on the walls, but all of them, at the same time. Might have been a migraine, but I could feel the pounding in my chest, like bass at a concert. Storm out into living room. See something dark in the corner of the room. Make a beeline for gun. Now adequately armed, survey the living room. Pentagram in middle of floor, with candles around it. This fucking bitch. Brain registers the dark thing in the corner. 7-foot tall void. Looks like no face from Spirited Away, but without the mask. We make eye contact. No eyes, but I can tell it's looking at me, sizing me up. Pounding has stopped at this point. Decide I'm delirious, and this is more fever dream bullshit, and decide to go back to bed with my 1911. Walk past thing, glaring at it. It feels indifference towards me. Boredom. Go back to bed. That's the end of the encounter. A day later, my fever broke, and I grilled the girl on what the fuck happened. She told me she was bored and wanted to summon something. She fucked up the ritual, and the something got loose. For the next couple of years, I would have nightmares about the something. Invoking the name of Jesus Christ seems to piss it off and make it go away, and it hasn't popped up in a while. I divorced the girl for being a pathological liar, among other things. If anyone has any idea on what she was doing, I'm all ears. I was dabbling into the paranormal before this happened, and this event actually turned me back towards the Lord, as invoking his name seems to be the only thing that works for warding off negative entities. Thinking back, I'm not actually sure if it was a pentagram on the floor, but there was something ritualist on the floor that she was using. Again, the memory is fuzzy. Oh say, no explanation, but it's true, in as much as all of this is accurate as I remember it. B child at aunt's house. Would visit all the time, sometimes multiple times a week. My older cousins are there. They tell me about the library. To transport to it, you have to squeeze behind the TV cabinet. Massive hardwood furniture with tons of storage. In between it and the wall, and go all the way up. The way the molding stuck out from the door, you could go in one side, but not out the other. Don't even remember the first time that it happened, but we do it all the time. occasionally 2 or 3 at once, usually alone. Have to become as thin as possible against the wall to squeeze through. Face almost touching the back of the TV. Can barely move once you reach it. Freeze in place and close your eyes, and you'll go to the library. Apparently, we just stand there for 20 minutes to an hour at times, silent, unmoving. Would never remember what happened in the library long after leaving, but would always be eager to go back. Adults thought it was just us being weird, but would get concerned when one of us would just jam ourselves between the furniture and the wall and freeze for an hour and a half at a time. I have no vivid memories of what happened in the library, but I can picture it. A massive wide open white space with countless books and circular reading pod sections. We'd discuss our adventures in the library together, but somehow forget them each time until we go back to the library. They fade fast, like dreams. Would neglect toys, games, TV, everything else, to randomly go visit the library. Still have no explanation.